Welcome to Legacy Blueprint, Planet Forward, the podcast where top thought leaders in law, finance, and wealth planning come together to guide your future. Hosted by distinguished estate planning attorney Mike Bascom, each episode highlights industry experts who bring clarity, innovation, and proven strategies to the table. Because building a legacy isn't a solo act, it's the result of a team of professionals working in harmony. Join us weekly as we showcase the leaders shaping tomorrow and give you the tools to plan with confidence today.
Well, today we're joined by Alyson Burkett, a certified financial planner and chartered retirement planning counselor who's been guiding families towards financial confidence for over 15 years, based right here in the Atlanta area. Alyson brings both professional expertise and personal passion to helping others build a secure future and lasting legacy. Welcome, Alyson.
Thanks, Mike. That's very kind. I appreciate the introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. Alyson, I see you've been helping families plan for retirement since 2009. What first drew you to financial advising, and how has your motivation evolved over the years?
I feel like most people find financial services because they want to help people. And I wanted to do medical type things. My parents had always worked in the medical world for a long time. I would say mid 2000s, the appeal of the medical world was dwindling just a little bit. So they said, you need to find a path where you can be a little bit more self-employed, have some flexibility, have a little bit more autonomy to do what you want to do. And so my grandfather was actually an accountant, and I was pretty good with numbers throughout school. So found myself interviewing with a lot of investment companies and a lot of insurance companies, actually, funny enough. And a lot of them, I really enjoyed what they had to say of what the day-to-day looked like, how they helped their clients, their personal stories, the antidotes that they had with their clients. I was really attached to a lot of that. So I knew that I wanted to do that after hearing some of the most amazing stories from them. So it started with wanting to help people originally, but having a bigger meaning in their life of how they made financial decisions, creating generational wealth, being charitable in nature were all really appealing topics to me.
Interesting. Now, I see that you hold both the CFP and the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designations. For our listeners who may not be aware of what those are, can you briefly just say what the certifications mean in practical terms and maybe how
Mhm.
they enhance the advice that you're able to give to families?
I think there's a lot of alphabet soup in our industry, as I'm sure you probably know. There's a designation for everything, which I think is great because it means that there's a lot of continuing education that advisors are doing depending on their licensing and registration. First, I started actually when I started in this industry, I knew I needed to have a little bit more knowledge because I was very young, especially compared to some of my peers. So I got the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designation. Essentially, what that means is you're focusing just on the financial planning process. How do you gather information from a client? It sounds so simple, but how do you gather information from a client? What information is important? What demographics do you need to know about a client? Their history, their experience, what molds the decisions that they make, how to implement that into a plan to then ultimately make recommendations and guide them into the right direction. I mean, that entire process from start to finish is actually very intensive, and there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. So that designation is purely just focusing on retirement planning with the client. Some of it does incorporate in estate planning, but it's a little bit more simple. The CFP or Certified Financial Planner designation, I think, is one of the designations that CFP board and the organization has done the most marketing in our industry, probably of any other designation or education entity. So, and they're almost on every commercial now. You know, social media, you can see they have some pretty cool ads that are out, which is really awesome. But that designation has a lot more backing behind it. There's an education component, there's an industry experience component that you have to be, and you have to have a good background as an advisor, meaning that you're a good citizen, you've done good things, you have made good financial decisions, as well as coursework, and then there's also an exam that goes with it. So those designations, both very different. The CFP, or the Certified Financial Planning designation, is the most encompassing, more of like a master's of financial planning, whereas that Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designation is like one chapter or one course credit of the CFP. So they complement each other nicely, but the CFP is all encompassing tax, estate planning, There's actually even business ethics within there as well as business psychology. So it's very interesting.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, I understand you grew up in Kennesaw and you spent summers with your grandparents in Alabama. What are some lessons about money or legacy that you learned or observed from your family that you think still guide you today?
I think the silent generation and even some of the older baby boomers have really shaped a lot of my financial principles, or at least some of the education as I've been coming up into this industry. My grandfather, like I said, was an accountant, and my grandmother was actually a teacher, at least on my mom's side of the family. So both of them were very hardworking people. They lived in a very small town of Alabama where they knew everybody. They gave back a lot to the community, and those things were very important to them. My grandfather ended up retiring early and becoming a business owner. So he opened and owned several of the stores within the county that he worked in. And one of them was Evergreen Grocery. It's not in existence anymore, but it was a grocery store where people would come and buy a random amount of things, but it was ended up kind of being his retirement job. So his accounting background gave him the ability to, I don't want to say pinch pennies, but be very frugal, be very intentional with how he used the income that came into the house, how they gifted from that money, and what decisions that they made to try and grow the family. They had four daughters. My mom was one of them. She was the oldest. So I had many cousins every summer. So we spent a lot of time at the grocery store. It's how I learned how to count change, which now seems kind of silly. Like having someone give you a $5 bill and, buy a Gatorade and, a candy bar and being able to count back the change to them was a good bit of my summer. So I really enjoyed that process of dealing with customers and counting change. And so it was a fun experience.
That's a great way to grow up. I
It is.
happened to also work in grocery stores when I was going through, but I was in the meat department, whereas
Mhm.
you were handling cashier and stocking duties probably a lot more.
I did organize a lot of shelves. My grandfather was a very quirky person, so there's a few ways he didn't like the shelves to be organized. So we would organize them, and then after we left, he would go back and reorganize them the way he wanted them. So, but
Spoken like a true business owner, right?
correct.
Yeah, very
Correct.
definitely. So, in your work, what are some of the most common misconceptions that you see families have about retirement or estate planning?
I think the one that I find the most common is that if you just save more, that you'll just be ready for retirement. And it's almost like a switch that you just turn on and you just do it. In reality, I think most of financial planning and most of retirement planning is habits and the psychology behind that. So if you've had poor habits or are struggling to make good decisions with whatever the amount of income that you have is, whether you're retired or not, those same psychological issues are still going to be there in retirement. So most people believe that just saving more will get you to those places, and that's not always accurate. There are also the vice versa of that is there are people that save an insane amount of money and they think that they will never ever be prepared for retirement. But in reality, they could actually retire now. And they just never will believe that and they will always save more and more and more and more and more. So getting a handle on what is reasonable, what's a good expectation, how can you adjust what you're doing every day to have the right balance of saving and spending and making sure that you continue good habits for you, not only your kids, because they're always going to be watching, but also in retirement as well.
So, let's speak a little bit more about that. I know many listeners worry about balancing that saving for the future versus enjoying life now. How do you help clients find that healthy balance?
I think it comes down to being able to do the principles correctly first. If you can't do the principles correctly first, then I don't think you will ever be truly able to enjoy life because you're always going to be something else will always be distracting you from those.
Mhm.
So having the right emergency fund, I do genuinely believe that having the least amount of debt that you can possibly have, I think mortgages are kind of the exception to that because housing is a shelter and it's very important whether it's rent or a mortgage, I think they can be very comparable. But having the basics taken care of first. So like insurance, right? A home, auto, car insurance, having those disability, life insurance, those things, having that basis, being able to say that you have an emergency fund to cover a worst case scenario that happens in life, and also being able to set consistent savings goals every single month and achieve those, whether that's, sometimes I encourage people to start small, like maybe 5% of their income and work up to probably a more realistic long-term goal of 15 to 20% of income. But starting there, if you can't do those things consistently, month after month, year after year, I don't think that you can really enjoy life because you're going to create more debt and you are going to sacrifice in some other ways and be distracted and then try to go back to the basics again. When someone has consistently saved, they've paid off their debts, they've done everything that they can. I think if you're saving at least 20% of your income, I think it's very reasonable to say, okay, let's set a goal every year of maybe what that travel budget needs to look like, and let's figure out a dollar figure based on your income that's reasonable. Maybe some of those trips are forced, maybe it's a family wedding, maybe it's a big birthday celebration or a big graduation celebration that you want to do. Like put a dollar figure to that. That way you have guardrails of what's reasonable. You shouldn't be spending outside of that because it's very easy to make a $10,000 budget, $20,000 budget in today's world. So that balance is important, but I do believe basics first and then incorporating the spend.
You truly are a descendant of an accountant.
Right? I'd like to think I have a little bit more fun than my grandfather would ever let him have. He definitely sacrificed in a lot of ways, and he passed, unfortunately, I think a little bit too soon. But he did enjoy life, I think, the last 5 years a
That's
little bit
great.
more.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. No, I liked your comments there about saving, but then also you got to have a little fun along the way. Otherwise,
Yeah.
what's the point of the ride?
Why do all the hard work? It's very empty.
Yeah. So I know that you do other things as well. You serve as secretary for the Atlanta chapter of Women in Financial Services. So let's talk about women. What are some of the unique challenges and opportunities that women face when they're trying to build financial security?
Great question. I mean, I think demographics wise, I look very different than most of my peers in the industry. And some of the things I talk about are very foreign to them because they're like, oh, they've either never personally experienced that or they've just never thought about it in their own family structure. The struggles that most women have are, if we start by age, so like younger females, like getting into the career world is difficult. It's finding your place and how you're going to contribute to society, I think is a little bit harder to find. I haven't met another female financial advisor that has told me, I went to college and I just knew I wanted to do this job. Usually it's a career transition of some kind. So I feel very rare by even saying like, I definitely knew I wanted to do this. Like it's crazy that I'm still doing the same thing that I did when I graduated college. But so finding that career, and also women usually, especially in the South, tend to take time off when they have kids. So they usually lose out on a few years of their career. So they've got to make up a little bit of ground, whether it's by income or waiting for promotions a little bit longer. Women also live a little bit longer and their health expenses are a little bit more than what most men are. That part's the hardest. I think the average statistics is women live about 4 to 5 years longer. So it's a little harder to plan for that. And most women experience different life changes than their male counterparts. For example, more women become caretakers for aging parents or are a little bit more affected by that sandwich generation. So they may even leave the workforce in between having their own children and caring for parents, or maybe even take a step back in their career and then kind of finish their career at their highest income. So that tends to make it a little bit difficult to save some extra money. And they tend to work a little bit longer too.
So it sounds as though it's fair to say they have an even more urgent need to have a plan in place than
I,
perhaps men do generally.
I think so. And it just comes down to life experience as well. Once they have had a life event that's happened and they've found a person that they trust and like, and they can go to them to answer those questions, I think that's when most financial advisor relationships start, is those life experiences, whether it's divorce, a family member passing, having a first child, being married for the first time, and being on a different plane as far as what financial conversations look like and looking for some guidance, or 5 years out from retirement saying, oh my goodness, like I've saved money, but I have no idea how to utilize any of this. So a lot of those transitions in life was usually how people find us.
Awesome. Yeah, previously you'd mentioned about wanting your kids to be able to travel and experience other cultures as they grow, and you've seen how travel and exposure to the world can help shape views and perceptions and perspectives. How do you see that perhaps impacting perceptions on money and legacy?
I think for me, the first time that I was probably a young adult visiting other countries, especially outside of the US, and you get to talk to the locals and see what are their experiences on the day-to-day basis? How much do they work? What does the average work day look like? how much money do they need to live? Like, because some people are very, very free with some of that information. Money is a very sensitive topic for many. They won't talk about it, but a lot of locals in different countries will actually talk about it pretty freely. They'll say, a good income in this country is $2,000 a month, or the rent in this country is this, and this is what it gets you. Or you have a conversation, they say, well, no one owns any of these properties, like you rent them. Or, here's how much we buy food for every day, or our habits of going to the grocery store. We go to the grocery store every day. You go and you buy your fish and you go and buy your bread. And then that's part of the culture and the life. When you experience that and you see, oh, wow, my perception of like what a good income is in the US and what a good income is in another country changes your perspective a little bit of, wow, maybe we should probably be a little bit more grateful for what we have. Or in a lot of these countries, they spend 2 to 5 years working, gosh, an insane amount of hours, a insane amount of days, weeks, years over and over and over again to do one international trip. So you feel your perception changes on that as well as I've met many, many people in Europe, for example, that their goal is to visit like New York City or they want to see California or they want to go to Disney World or they want to get an RV and travel across the US. And you're like, wow. And they'll tell you how many years they've been saving to do that one trip or that one experience. And you just have to take a moment and go like, wow, but that's normal. That's what they do. I think other countries where you experience or see a lot more food scarcity or, even just eating a meal or what's a good job, what's a bad job, what's most of the time it's the service-oriented travel jobs that are, the luxury jobs to have and, what that day-to-day looks like. Like they work 7 days a week, week after week after week. It's just a different experience. And the conversations are different. What they do every single day is different. So I like to see those, and my kids have been seeing more of that, and the questions that they ask are sometimes difficult to answer.
Well, that's awesome. We have a pretty significant economic bubble here in the metro Atlanta area and
Yes.
even the United States. And so to experience life outside that bubble, very valuable for young people, particularly as they're starting to form their own views. So I love that. Okay, let me get personal here for a second. So
Yeah.
from a business side, what do you see as the biggest roadblocks to scaling your impact or reaching more families who would benefit from your guidance?
I think it's just time, energy, and effort. I mean, most everything comes down to time, energy, and effort. I mean, I have a very big heart. I try to give back as much as possible. I mean, one of the things I just simply offer within the community, there's several moms groups that I'm a part of, and I will tell every single person, like I try to do at least like 4 to 5 pro bono hours a month. So I will, lots of financial questions show up on these mom pages, and I will say in a very neutral way, like, hey, I'm a financial planner, I said, but I will talk to you for 30 minutes for free, no cost, regardless of your economic condition or situation or whatever it is. I would love to guide you at least in the right direction and answer some questions, like not in a public forum, because I feel like some of those things are very, very personal to at least help them. And I also have a lot of friends in the community as well that have young kids that are finishing college or maybe they're majoring in finance and they're saying, "Hey, can you talk to my kid about, your industry and what you do and what your job is or what some options are?" And like it can't come from me because I'm the parent, right? But and so
Mm.
I do have some of those conversations as well. So I try to give back in those ways, but it's time. I mean, I only have so much time every single month to do those things. I mean, I love my clients. It's not fair for me to take away from clients that are paying us a good amount of money to take care of their assets and guide them in the right direction. But I would love to do more charitable things as time grows on and my kids grow up and I have a little bit more free time. But I do what I can.
Very good. When you think about the phrase planning your legacy, what does that mean to you personally as both a financial professional and as a parent?
The first thing that comes to mind is estate planning, first and foremost. I think the way that you show your family that you love them more than anything, and we've had some very difficult family losses this year, unfortunately, but the way that you show your family that you love them more than anything else in the world is that you plan for the worst case scenario and you take away every decision that they don't have to make if something were to happen to you or your significant other, whether that's on the medical side, the financial side, or any other special requests that you have. I mean, I think it's even really admirable when people write their obituary before they even pass, and they just kind of leave some blanks in there and they take it away. I think that's a huge relief for a lot of families when they're grieving. The other aspect of that is one of our goals in our office every day, and why some we do some of the pro bono work that we do, or like women in financial services that I've helped out with many, many times, is giving back to other females in this industry and being available to them to answer questions. But it's how many financial lives have you touched or changed or had a memory or been a thought or a conversation at the Thanksgiving table? I think that's a legacy. So people remembering you in that way or making an impression where, like, I've had a client tell me, oh my gosh, what was it recently? She said her and her husband had just paid off their home, and they were like, we are mortgage and debt free 100%. And we've talked about, does it make sense to invest some of that money? Does it make sense to save some of that money? And I'm like, cash is king. Cash gives you flexibility. And she's like, you live rent free in my head. Like, we were about to go like do this HELOC to do some home renovations on our house. And she was like, save up the cash. And when you have the cash, you can do it. And, so when I hear those things, I'm like, okay, so people are listening, they're paying attention. But you really realize that a lot of financial advisors, and one of my peers has told me this, like, you make more of an impression as a financial advisor in somebody's life than a doctor. Like a doctor, you go to a doctor, right? They give you the printout, you take the 5 pages home, but it's a once a year visit. Like, you are a financial advisor, you're touching them multiple times throughout the year. Like, they're looking for guidance from you just in the same way they are for a doctor, but the relationship is a lot different. So I think that's important as far as a legacy goes.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Many of our families are quite experienced, but we do have some that are just starting out and they're just really starting to think seriously for the first time about their financial future. What would you tip as maybe the 2 or 3 simple steps that you could recommend that they might take right now?
I think the first one is an emergency fund, just to be able to create a bucket of money that is there for a rainy day that you haven't planned for so that you don't have to go out and have debt or make a decision that you don't want to take. Like, the first time that happens and you're able to take from a bucket and then replenish it, I think provides a lot of financial relief, because I think that's where most people start with making bad decisions, is credit cards and home equity lines of credit and whatever else it might be. Then I would say the second is, I'm going to go back to the estate planning piece just because it's so timely this month as well, is making sure that at the very least you have a very simple will, and a medical and financial power of attorney document is a very simple way to just say, okay, I've taken care of the legal side of life. Like, life's going to change and happen, but at least I have those ducks in a row. The emergency fund, and then I think things can grow and become more complex from there. But I think those are the two most important things that people can do to take control.
So, Allison, I'm going to ask you, what's a piece of timeless advice you'd want every listener to remember when it comes to planning or protecting or passing on their legacy?
The simplest thing is making an inventory of where things are and who the contact person is for those things, and to refresh and confirm that the beneficiary or the ownership of that account, who and what is that.
Mhm. Excellent. Very timely advice. Very cogent advice there. Well, thank you. If someone wanted to speak with you more, how could they reach you?
So our firm website is called 21 Goats Financial Planning. So we have a website, 21 Goats with S, FP for financialplanning.com. There is a bio. My husband and I work together. We're partners in life and business, which is very cool. We are very similar in mindset. We both got economics degrees. We both see the world in the very same way. We both have very similar values, but we're very different in what we do every single day. So my job looks very different than Brian, but we complement each other very well. And we have several support people that help us initiate and make sure everything gets done. But our website has a link to my calendar where you could contact us or send us a message and say, hey, here, I've got some questions. That's probably the easiest way to find us.
All right. And we'll put a link for your website down in the description below. All right.
Perfect.
Allison, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it. That was great.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
That concludes today's episode of Legacy Blueprint, Plan It Forward with Mike Bascom. Each week, we bring you insights from thought leaders across law, finance, and wealth planning. Because building your legacy is never a one-person journey. It takes a team of dedicated professionals working in harmony to turn vision into achievement. If you're ready to take the next step toward your secure future, Visit bascomlaw.com or call 77028559493. And don't forget to tune in again next week as we highlight more experts and strategies to help you plan it forward with confidence.